Next up, we have Siri K. Zemel, who will be speaking on ethical readiness and professionalization among mediums and channelers in the United States.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you. I'm so delighted to be here. It's my first PA conference, so thanks for having me. And I'm excited to talk to you today about ethical readiness and professionalization among mediums and channelers in the U.S. We know that this field is growing in terms of economic impact and public interest, but it is very young in its journey towards professionalization. What does that mean? What's a journey towards professionalization? Well, let's break it down. What's the difference between an occupation and a profession? Well, we know that an occupation is essentially a precursor to a profession, right? And it becomes a profession when it consolidates its status, improves its services, and standardizes and systematizes the rules around its practices. Now, the journey towards professionalization is a long and winding road, including legal, political, societal acceptance, but it's really important, right? Because it gives us a sense of what's important in a society. It gives us a sense of societal change and readiness. So how do we know when an occupation becomes a profession, when it's arrived? Well, there's really not an easy answer. It's pretty subjective. But there's a couple of really critical milestones, and those include a code of ethics and a professional association. So a code of ethics within a profession distinguishes the values and moral obligations of that profession, typically disseminated by a professional association, which also structures and governs the field, creates skill development and knowledge networks, provides mentorship, and helps with the social recognition piece. All right, so that's professionalization. Let's talk about mediumship and channeling. You all know mediums report experiencing regular communication with the deceased. We have mental and physical. This particular study looks at mental alone. Channeling, the process of revealing information and energy not limited by our conventional notions of space and time, can appear receptive or expressive, and in particular, trance channeling is when a channeler willingly enters degrees of trance-like states of consciousness, whereby the channel connects with sources of information that appear to exist outside of their ego awareness. We've combined these two terms because they're so tightly linked, and there's really no socially accepted difference between these two occupations. There's also no code of ethics or regulatory structure for these occupations within the United States. In terms of mentorship, we know that this amazing organization offers mentorship to young scientists and students entering this field. No such mentorship exists within the U.S. for parapsychological practitioners, the individuals doing this work in the public, in a neutral, nonprofit way. Perhaps there's a gap here. So let's talk about terminology. Parapsychologists, we know, are the scientists who work within this field. But there's really no predominant term for a parapsychological practitioner, a large umbrella term. So perhaps this gap in terminology points to a gap between research and application. So let's look at our objectives. We wanted to assess readiness for formalized structure within the U.S. mediumship and channeling field, specifically to identify beliefs and practices related to research, education, and training, to identify beliefs related to ethical standards and scope of practice guidelines, and assess views on the development of formalized professional structure within the field. This was a mixed method design approved by ION's IRB committee. It was a cross-sectional survey via an online self-administered questionnaire with 34 total questions divided into 3 different sections. The first section was demographic and practice information. The second section was belief statements. And the third was open-ended feedback. We're going to look at each of these 3 sections. Our respondents were anonymous U.S. adult professional mediums and channelers, which we defined as someone who communicates with discarnate souls or other energies from a non-physical realm to relay information in exchange for money or money equivalent. 148 completed our demographics and practice information section, 140 completed the statements of belief section, and 115 provided open-ended feedback. So starting with the demographics, these were primarily middle-aged females of European descent, and you can see here the breakdown of their ages and ethnicities. Across the U.S. territories, there was no statistically significant difference, so pretty equally divided among Northeast, West, South, and Midwest. In terms of education and learning, these are primarily educated individuals, bachelor's degree or higher at 80%, and some training in mediumship and channeling. On this some training piece, the question here was, what learning have you done? Specifically in professional mediumship and channeling. This is interesting. The first here at 4.1% says no non-belief. That response was, no, I've not done any learning because I believe these skills are highly personal and cannot be taught. The next, no belief at 4%, was no, I've not done any learning, but I'm open to research and education. We've got 20% group online, 25.5% group in person, 25.5% private one-on-one mentorship, and 20% other. This other category included things like family lineage, spirit guides, books, etc. In terms of certification, most of our respondents either wanted to be certified, were certified, or offered certification. Here, that breakdown again is 14.4%. Nope, not certified. I believe these skills are highly personal and cannot be certified. 31.3%. Nope, but I'm interested. I'd like to be certified. 42.5%. Yep, I'm certified, and almost 12%. I offer a certification program. There were 90 certification programs listed, of which 64% were unique. So 58 different certification programs were listed for this group. A lot of variability. Let's look at terminology again. What do you call yourself? 50% said I'm a medium, 6.5% I'm a channeler, 10.4% intuitive, 1.5% sensitive, almost 12% psychic, and almost 20% other. And again, of other, 68% of those terms were unique terms. And what do you call this work that you do with others in your professional time? Almost 46% said it's a session, 9% said it's an appointment, 36% it's a reading, and 9% other. And of those other terms, 59% were unique terms, included things like consultation, healing, sitting, etc. And on the names of self, some of those other terms, clairvoyant, energy healer, etc. So again, wide variety of options in terms of terminology, certification, and training. Typically, these sessions are provided between 45 and 60 minutes in length, can be offered through a variety of different platforms, phone, online, in person. Although mostly our participants said I do it from home when I do the in-person work, and other in-person locations included 20% said it's in a professional setting, like I do this in an office. 17% I do it here and there, all over the place, depending. 12% another place specifically, like a church or an event. Almost 79% said they do this work at least once a week or more, and you can see here the breakdown of that frequency from less than once a month all the way to 10 or more times per week. And the average charge was $100 to $299 US per session or of time that they spent. And about 66% made under $50,000 US per year just from channeling and mediumship alone, not including income from any other sources. All right, that was our demographics and practice information. Let's look at what this group believes. So here's our statements of belief. I know there's a lot on this slide, and don't worry, I'm going to break it down. But we had 16 different statements. We're going to see how strongly you agree or disagree with these statements. So we had a 0 to 100 like scale. 0 is I strongly disagree. 100, I strongly agree. And you can see here those averages and standard deviations for each belief. We're just going to look at the strongest beliefs that had the tightest group cohesion. First, research, education, and training are important. to help advance the field of mediumship and channeling professionals. That was at an 87.8 average, plus or minus 17.4. The field of channeling mediumship should develop ethical standards, scope of practice guidelines, and/or similar resources for professionals. The average there was 86.2 plus or minus 19.6. And more people in the United States are experiencing intuitive channeling mediumship abilities than ever before and could benefit from a more structured professional field that offers resources and support. Average 83.3 plus or minus 17.3. So we'll look at each one of these strong belief statements and see how it connects to our demographic information. So starting at the top there, research, education, and training are important to help advance the field for channeling and mediumship professionals. We can see that there is some variability here among the different groups, specifically looking at certification status. So again, on the far right, no non-belief, that's nope, not certified, not going to be certified. I believe that these skills are highly personal and cannot be certified. Moving all the way to, yes, I offer a certification program, and we can see that as individuals move through that spectrum, the strength of belief increases and the standard deviation decreases. We see this same trend among certification status for the next statement, which is the field of channeling mediumship should develop ethical standards, scope of practice guidelines, and/or similar resources between no, not certified, and yes, offer. The same trend for the same group we see with the statement, more people in the U.S. are experiencing intuitive channeling mediumship abilities and could benefit from a more structured professional field that offers resources. Now, for this particular statement, there were a couple of other connections that we saw with the demographics. One was frequency of work, and we saw a statistically significant difference between those who practiced 10 or more times per week, who had a stronger belief, compared to those who practiced less than once a week but more than once a month. We also saw something with those who earned more than $25,000, less than $50,000 US dollars, as compared to those who earned less than $25,000 US dollars. Now, let's return back for just a minute to the objective. What were we looking for again? To assess readiness for formalized structure. There was a couple of belief statements that really hit on this. One, if there was a nonprofit professional association for channelers and mediums in the US, I would enjoy being part of it. That was listed on average at 76.79, plus or minus 24.49, and the field of channeling and mediumship in the U.S. should develop a neutral, nonprofit professional association. The average there was 69.26, plus or minus 25.75. And my personal favorite, I would like the opportunity to connect with other professionals in the field of channeling and mediumship, on average 81.2. I like this one because we see a strong statistical significance here between those in the South, part of the U.S., which is where I live in Tennessee, as compared to those in the West specifically, but also compared to those in the Northeast. I can certainly relate to this. All right. Those were all of our statements of belief. Last section in our survey was the open-ended responses, okay? 115 participants engaged here, and we had a total of 290 comments that we qualitatively coded. The three questions here were, one, do you have any other feedback you'd like to share regarding research, education, and training within the professional field of channeling mediumship? Two, do you have any other feedback you'd like to share regarding formalized structure within the professional mediumship and channeling field? And three, any other feedback you'd like to share regarding the contents of the survey. So all of those open-ended responses were coded together, and you can see here the 8 major themes that emerged. The first, at 20.2%, was ethical responsibility. The second, at 18.6%, was professional and field development. 11.5%, field expertise and leadership. 11%, education and certification. 9.6%, practice variability and uniqueness. 7.8%, integrity, legitimacy, and destigmatization. 7.6%, formalized structure and regulation, and 7.6%, bad actors. We're just going to look at those top 4 and break those down just a little bit into the sub-themes. So starting with ethical responsibility at 20.2%, we saw an overwhelming sense of urgency to develop ethical standards. We also saw that consumer ethics are really important, especially this responsibility to the public to do no harm. And finally, that some practitioners in the field already adhere to an ethical code that's carried over from a previous profession. All right, the next major theme was professional and field development. And here we saw a lot of volunteerism spirit, a lot of thank you for doing this work, this is wonderful, how can I help, call on me to help. There was also this sort of slow down, proceed with caution in considering these standards because we don't want to inadvertently diminish or discredit the integrity of this really unique work. Also, that early career stages may need more guidance than those in the advanced stages of development. Field expertise and leadership, they wanted to ensure that genuine and knowledgeable practitioners are the ones setting the standards, and that this must emerge from within a deep understanding of the work. We don't want somebody from the outside telling us what to do and not to do. There was a sense that field leaders do exist, but the expertise is a little bit limited. And then this could be really difficult in developing consensus, potentially, due to vastly different philosophies. I had a little bit of fun with this one, education and certification. Within the open-ended survey responses, there's a little bit of controversy here. Is this an innate ability? This is an ability that develops with training and practice, or it's both innate but can be enhanced. So it was fun to watch those comments. However, going back to our statements of belief, we did have a statement that read, professionals in the field hold unique and intuitive gifts that cannot be improved through research education. This was a really low-rated belief. So again, on that 0 to 100 scale, the average here was 20. We did have a wide standard deviation, 25.22. Also in education and certification, there was feedback there are major inconsistencies across certification programs. Some are highly scientifically rigorous, and others are pay-to-play. Grief training, specifically for mediums, is critical, and this ties back into the consumer ethics piece and the public protection. Finally, in summary, our survey was completed by mostly middle-aged, college-educated white females in the U.S. with previous training and certification in mediumship and channeling, and they believed that research, education, and training are important to help advance the field. That the field should develop ethical standards, scope of practice guidelines, and or similar resources for professionals. Newcomers could benefit from a more structured field that offers resources and support. They would enjoy being part of a nonprofit professional association, and the field should develop a nonprofit professional association. And finally, in response to the overwhelming sense of urgency that we saw with regard to the development of ethical standards, we are doing just that. We invite you to participate in this study and or share this study with those who you think may benefit. This is specifically open to practicing mediums and channelers who are English-speaking, not just the US, but those who are interested in aiding in the development of ethical standards. This is a process of consensus building, so it'll be a very iterative long process of collecting information and developing that code of ethics for the field. References. An enormous thank you to Dr. Helané Wahbeh for supporting this work, IONS for supporting this work. Thank you to the audience, and now I'll take the applause.
Thank you, Siri. Any questions? Liza, yes.
Thank you. That was absolutely fascinating, fantastic, and overdue. So it's so exciting. Thank you. As an American who lives in the UK, I was really surprised to learn that they were quite sophisticated over there when it came to this profession, if you will. But it's the whole gamut from, this is an inherited attribute and I can't charge money for what I do, to the certifications. I just want to share two things and ask you two quick questions. the questions are, were these people all full-time channels or mediums? Because I did my own research and I found out that most people come to this profession as an interest that develops. It's a second career, it's mostly women, and they transition to it full-time if they do. And the other thing is that I'm curious to see if you would do this research in the UK. I'll certainly share the link with people. But they were really quick to get on consumer protection in the UK. So this is sort of a self-regulated area, and they have a couple professional associations because they're just so much about consumer protection over there. So I'm wondering, certainly you've invited international people to participate in this. I'm just wondering if you might look to the UK just because it seems so entrenched over there. And thank you again.
Yeah, thank you for your comments. Excellent questions. So first, to answer your first question, we did not specifically ask, do you do this full time? I think we can infer on a couple of those questions. One was frequency of work, and so we did see that range between less than once a month to 10 or more times per week. So there's not full-time hours there for a lot of those people. And then again, looking at the economics of it, so 66% brought in less than $50,000 per year from these services. That could be a full-time job for some people. So there's some inferences there. We didn't ask the question specifically. With regard to reaching out to the UK, absolutely. And I can thank Helané for this one. And so we transitioned from just looking at the United States to looking at all English speaking, and that's not that doesn't have to be primary English language, just English speaking. So we have opened it up to anyone who wants to participate and really help us in this process of developing the ethical standards. Thank you.
Thank you. I saw another hand over here. Yeah.
Thank you for the nice overview on the American scene of, and I have to say white scene, of mediums and channelers. And so I wonder, do you have any idea to, and you also talked of English-speaking persons, but I don't think that it reflects the whole picture in the US. So if I remember it correctly, it's only 2% of African Americans that participated, even less than Native Americans. So do you have, maybe I was wrong, but do you have any idea how to get these African Americans?
You're right. So African 2%, Latinx 10.7%, Asian 1%, and Native American 9.6%. Excellent question.
That this reflects the whole picture, so to say. You have
Well,
to reach them.
So this is really one of the questions that we have, which is how reflective is this? We don't know. In terms of this scene in the United States, we don't know how large it is and the number of what the population really looks like. This is just a starting place. But I'm very open to your feedback if you have thoughts on how to engage that population. And recruitment, help us with recruitment. I think that we want as many perspectives as possible, certainly.
Thank you, and thank you, Gerhard. It's such an important question about recruitment and diversity, and how do we actually reach greater diversity of peoples, and we face this in every single research study that we do, so thank you for bringing it up. Obviously, we can't force people to participate and be interested in our research questions, and yet to at least allow for the opportunity for them to participate if they choose to. Let me look at my time. I think we have time for at least one more question. Is there another question? Or maybe not. Oh, Steve, yes.
I was wondering if there was a sort of opposition towards this research, or to the whole idea of mediumship from the Christian communities in the US?
Great question. I don't know. We didn't survey and ask that question specifically. Can you say more on that?
I don't know. I just imagine there might be some resistance, that's all. Because I've heard, for example, that there's resistance to the idea of reincarnation, for example, from Christian communities, even from parents who have So you have children who report previous experiences from previous lives, though their parents may be unable to accept them.
Well, I think it's an excellent question that really goes back to sort of looking at the beginning here, which is the field is growing. And so we've just pulled this data based on the IBIS world market, looking at both economically and sort of interest, and these trends are going up. But a profession will only become a profession if it has societal acceptance, and if there's enough people that are willing to pay for services and support those services, and if there's enough practitioners willing to participate in some type of formalization process or structure process to give these services structure and meaning. And if that falls apart, then we're not ready, right? And so the literature on professionalization talks about when in the journey from an occupation to a profession, this journey that's called professionalization, there are many, many failed professions that try and make this journey and that don't make it, or the time is just not right for them. And so that's the question that's yet to be answered. Is the time now? Is the time right? And is there really enough public interest to stand behind this and enough folks in the field that want this in order to move it forward? So we'll see.
Thank you so much, Siri.